day 798 of the Trump administration. And as we all continue to react to a 4-page letter summarizing the Mueller report, and not the actual Mueller report, not yet, it's clear the president has interpreted the letter from his own attorney general as his vindication, and he made it the theme of his rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan tonight.
The Russia hoax is finally dead. Robert Mueller was a god to the Democrats, was a god to them until he said there was no collusion. The crazy attempt by the Democrat Party and the fake news media right back there and the deep state to overturn the results of the 2016 election have failed. The Russia witch hunt was a plan by those who lost the election to try and illegally regain power by framing innocent Americans, many of them. They suffered with an elaborate hoax.
One reported detail about the Mueller report has emerged. Today, the New York Times, NBC News, and the Washington Post separately reported that the document is more than 300 pages. Two people on Fox News have said it's 700 pages. And to be fair, the CNN website has a report that it's 1,000 pages. Either way, it's longer than the 4-page summary that everyone so far is reacting to. The Times writes the size of the report, quote, suggests that Mr. Mueller went well beyond the kind of bare-bones summary required by Justice Department regulation and detailed his conclusions at length, and it raises questions about what Mr. Barr might have left out. Our own Julia Ainsley writes that this, quote, suggests Mueller provided substantial evidence to back up his conclusions, raising new questions about how much of that evidence the public will see. House Democrats have told Barr they want the report by next Tuesday, but Barr has already told the House Judiciary Chairman, Jerry Nadler, Democrat of New York, that he is unlikely to be able to meet that deadline. Our own Casey Hunt reports that the delay could result in a major confrontation next week between Democrats and the Attorney General. Earlier today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi criticized Barr's handling of the Mueller report.
No, thank you, Mr. Attorney General. We do not need your interpretation. Show us the report, and we can draw our own conclusions. We don't need you interpreting for us. It was condescending, it was arrogant, and it wasn't the right thing to do.
And again, in the meantime, in this period, before we are able to see what we're allowed to see of the Mueller report, Republicans have launched an effort to unseat House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, Democrat of California, to get him to resign. At his rally tonight, the president called Schiff a pencil neck for what that's worth. Today, at a committee hearing, it all burst out into the open when the top Republican member said this to Chairman Schiff.
You've been at the center of a well-orchestrated media campaign claiming, among other things, the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government. We have no faith in your ability to discharge your duties in a manner consistent with your constitutional responsibility and urge your immediate resignation as chairman of the committee.
My colleagues may think it's okay that the Russians offered dirt on a Democratic candidate for president as part of what was described as the Russian government's effort to help the Trump campaign. You might think that's okay. I don't.
Speculation about possible pardons is back in the news tonight after the president declined to shut it down during an interview just last night. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, the former campaign chairman Paul Manafort seemed to be the names most often mentioned. Tonight, the Associated Press reporting Trump has privately expressed sympathy for Manafort, who was sentenced to 7 years in prison, you'll recall. According to the AP, some of Trump's closest advisors and GOP allies are advising against pardons because of the sheer political cost. On another front today, Jared Kushner showed up in Congress. NBC News reporting Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor was there to meet with the Senate Intelligence Committee. It was the first time Kushner was questioned by senators. His appearance back in 2017 only involved questioning by committee staff. That committee is still looking at the Trump campaign and Russia's election interference. Kushner's questioning today may indicate that investigation is closer to wrapping up. The end of the Senate inquiry would then leave just the House with open inquiries into the president. Tonight, Trump worked in some blue language when warning the Democrats who are investigating him.
The Democrats have to now decide whether they will continue defrauding the public with ridiculous bullshit.
So our president has just decided to let it fly. Let's bring in our leadoff panel for a Thursday night. Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times. Barbara McQuade, veteran federal prosecutor, former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. And Tessa Berenson, White House correspondent for Time magazine. Her latest is about Attorney General Barr, and it's headlined The Decider. Welcome to you all. Peter Baker, do we have this about right? All we have so far is the Barr interpretation. We don't have the Mueller report. During this interim, could be days, could be weeks, the president is trying to cement his story in the public mind.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. All we have really, not even 4 pages, what we have are 2 lines, 2 sentences in effect from Robert Mueller as quoted by Bill Barr in his memo. And they're 2 important sentences. One of them is that the Mueller investigation did not establish any conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. That's very important. That was the main original mission. And the other one was that Robert Mueller does not accuse the president of any crime of obstruction, but nor does he exonerate him from that. Those are the 2 things we know about this report at this point, as quoted by Bill Barr. The 300 pages more that we are going to see, or possibly could see at some point, we hope to see certainly, have a whole lot more information. Now, the bottom line is still going to be what's important. The president's obviously going to continue to go around saying he was exonerated. And if there's not any further consequence, because those are the 2 conclusions of this report, those still are very important. But we're going to learn more. We're going to learn more about what Robert Mueller discovered about contacts with Russia and what he thinks they might have added up to what was going on there, even if they weren't criminal. We're going to learn more about his view of the obstruction allegations. Now, what we're told is that most of the things that add up to this obstruction case, if one were to be made, are things we already know about, presumably like the firing of Jim Comey, the FBI director, the discussion about whether to fire Robert Mueller himself, those kinds of things. So, you know, at that point, there'll be obviously a big debate as to what the details of these 300-plus pages add up to. And I think that's going to, you know, that will obviously still continue to shadow over the president, despite the bottom line conclusions that are more favorable to him.
Tessa, to your reporting, how are things inside the West Wing these days?
Well, I think what you saw at Trump's rally tonight is a nice encapsulation of his mood and the mood in the White House, which is that they're all sort of oscillating between being really exuberant and happy about what we know of Mueller's report through Barr, and also feeling incredibly angry and frustrated about the course of the investigation over the past 2 years. And so you really saw both on display at Trump's rally tonight. And he wants to move forward, but he's not quite ready to move on, and he wants revenge. And I was talking yesterday with Raj Shah, who is the former deputy press secretary at the White House, about how Trump might use this anger as a political weapon in 2020. And Raj was saying now, whenever anyone criticizes Trump in the election, fairly or unfairly on policy matters, Trump can point and say, well, look, this person was dead wrong on the biggest thing, and I was right, and you shouldn't trust them. And Raj Shah at least thinks that will be a very effective strategy for Trump in the election.
Barb, let me play something for you. This is Liz Holtzman, former New York City member of Congress, former member House Judiciary, who voted for impeachment during the Watergate matter. We'll talk about it on the other side.
The real question here is whether we're seeing a cover-up in slow motion or fast motion, or whether the American people are going to get the facts. We have Mr. Barr's version of what is criminal and not, but maybe Mr. Mueller's assessment of the evidence suggests something else.
So, Barb, what's the real chance of that there's the Barr version and then the Mueller version, the baseline, what we're dealing with here is markedly different or different at all?
Well, my guess is that William Barr would not make overt misrepresentations in that letter. But there may be, and certainly is, detail that is not included there. And what's interesting about his analysis is he analyzes these issues of both conspiracy and obstruction of justice as if President Trump were someone who could be indicted by a grand jury. We know that the Department of Justice has an opinion that says a president cannot be indicted by a grand jury. So instead of applying the criminal statutes that would apply to an ordinary defendant, what Congress would apply in an impeachment standard is no standard at all. It's not articulated in the Constitution. It's whatever they decide amounts to a high crime or misdemeanor. And so looking at the facts is very important. And I think in many ways, William Barr has now prejudged the evidence and told America this does not amount to any kind of crime. It may not amount to a violation of those federal statutes. That doesn't mean Congress wouldn't find it an impeachable offense. But I think this delay that they've built in, which I don't understand, gives President Trump, he says, weeks for the public to let this news settle in before Congress gets a look at it. I don't see any reason why Robert Mueller could not have written a report that was written in such a way as to minimize the inclusion of grand jury material so that the public and Congress could see it. There are witness interviews and at least 500 search warrants that are not subject to grand jury secrecy. So I don't know why Congress can't see at least part of that report today. But I wonder, the cynic in me, I guess, wonders whether it isn't an effort by William Barr to sort of sensitize the public and Congress that there is no crime here, so that by the time they see it weeks from now, people will have moved on.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.